All right, thank you all very much for coming to City Hall today. September 9th, 2024, the 1-year anniversary of last year's flood. We thought it was important to come together to commemorate the work. We wanted to come together on this 1-year mark, commemorate the event, acknowledge all the incredible work that happened that night, the firefighters that risked their lives to save others, the police officers, the public works folks, the code enforcement officers who were out that night and into the days in the true emergency, and then for all of the work that has gone on since that night to today and ongoing to do the long-term work of fixing infrastructure, to help try to buy out the homes that were destroyed, to give funds to people who were trying to get a new boiler but couldn't afford it. There's been so much work that has gone in on this last year. In addition to that, we want to acknowledge the trauma of that event. For us in our household, between my husband's business, me being the mayor, and us having a 3-week-old baby at the time, September 9th, 2023 is an event in our household. It is something that my daughter and husband and I talk about a lot. She remembers that night. She remembers being scared. She remembers the stress of that night. And I think that goes to a lot of families in this area, whether or not you lost a home. In the case of 2 of our residents just north of us in the Clark Summit lost loved ones, it's something that's going to live on in the hearts and the minds of people in our area for some time. So we want to really acknowledge that, acknowledge how difficult that night was, hope and pray, of course, that nothing that catastrophic happens again, but also be prepared for the worst, as we always try to be. And I have this team and everyone else in the city to thank for thinking through all of the immediate reaction, and Chief Judge can speak to that in a moment, and then to folks like Tom Riley and his engineering team, Eileen for continuing to put together the puzzle pieces of the funding and the project management, Morgan Fetzak, who's been just at it every single day to make sure that the communication with individual residents is there. Jerry Smurl, our council president, and all of council have been super supportive throughout all of this. So I'm grateful to all the work that we've been able to do, and we can tick through some of the specifics in a moment. But I'm grateful for the work that's ongoing, the work that happened that night, of course, and always the image of the firefighters saving people on boats. We have those boats for a reason. We've got great planning and Chief Judge always for planning for the worst. But it's hard to think back to that night without feeling that fear in your heart and hope that nothing like this ever happens again. We can never predict the weather. We can never plan for everything. You can't plan for 6 inches of rain in 90 minutes, but we can do the best we can to keep our residents safe. So with that, I'll have Chief Judge give her remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the highlights that I want to kind of talk about is even before the storm happened last year, there was a lot of work that was being done in the city of Scranton just because of the kind of topography that the city has and our flood risk. The amount of effort and energy and actual money that's been put into making the city of Scranton a safer place has been, one of the mayor's primary goals, and it seems like it's something that I work on almost daily with a project management team and especially the city engineer. Right before that storm had happened, we were still cleaning up debris from the 2018 flood. Some of those funds were delayed being put into use simply because of COVID, change of administration, and I hate to think how worse it could have been had some of those areas not already been cleaned up. And that work continues today. At this point in July of this past July, we finished every one of the projects from that 2018 event with the exception of one, and that's the flood wall on Elm Street, about 135 feet of flood wall. And that's millions of dollars that the city did not have to pay. Those were federal funds that came in, and also there'll be state funds that supplement it at the end as well. And we continue to do that work on a daily basis. It's about making sure that we're ready for the next event. Like the mayor says, we can never predict it, but I can tell you there's going to be another one. None of us know when, but the city's much more prepared today than we were even yesterday. We've engaged with the Army Corps of Engineers, who was here last week, to do a semi-qualitative risk assessment for our levee system. We've engaged members from FEMA to do a community assistance visit related to the National Flood Insurance Program, and that work and those efforts are ongoing. It's a constant improvement process where we meet daily on these different initiatives to make sure that the city is safer. Specifically on that day, like the mayor said, nobody could predict it. Even the National Weather Service did not really give us a heads up because they didn't know, just because of the dynamics of that storm that came in. But the city of Scranton, in all aspects, was ready to get into the fight that night between the police department, the fire department, and the Department of Public Works, and then code enforcement officials to come in and help us do windshield damage surveys. It was really a testament to how far the city's come, where we're not working in silos, and that was another one of the mayor's major initiatives when she came in, that there's constant communication between all the different directors. So that night, a lot of great work was done, and like the mayor says, our hearts really do go out to those residents who are still suffering today, and we realize that. But just know that the city continues to do that work to make sure that we can get those homes bought out. We continue to move through that process with FEMA and PEMA at the state level. They're assisting us, and the hope is that we'll be able to get some closure for those residents sooner rather than later. Thank you.
All right, so like Chief said, and we announced a couple of months ago that we've passed the first and we hope highest hurdle to being able to do those buyouts. It's been a lot of work behind the scenes from the folks that are here next to me, and then for others that have been trying to work through it. Sherry Frable is our grant writer. She's been hard at work with Morgan and Tom, I think, the most on making sure that we have every single T crossed to get those funds. As you all know, we tried very, very, very hard to get the disaster declaration and to get the FEMA funds for public infrastructure. Unfortunately, we came up short on that, but it wasn't for lack of trying, and we'll continue to fight for every dollar we can get for this storm and prepare ourselves to be able to do that when the next one hits. For the grants, remember those $5,000 grants we gave out? We ended up giving out 90 awards. Those were to help people meet their insurance deductibles, replace their boiler, things that were very, very important to those families last fall and winter, and we were very proud to be able to get those funds out. So those are rescue plan funds. Same with all of these stormwater projects that we have going. Remember, we've allocated over $20 million of our $69 million to stormwater. That was already teed up before this hit. That was from our original budget in 2021 that we put through. But those stormwater projects are so important, and I have to stress again, I know I do it all the time, that President Joe Biden and the funds from the rescue plan and the infrastructure law are enabling most of this recovery to happen. We would not be able to do tens of millions of dollars of stormwater work if President Biden was not valuing infrastructure and valuing the decision-making ability and project management capability of those folks at the local government level. We have Kaiser Valley, North Scranton, East Mountain, Manuka, West Scranton, and Tripp Park. Those are all stormwater projects that are in various phases. We're very excited to do that work. We see folks from Riley Engineering in many, many neighborhoods. We have our GPI and all these different engineering firms that we're working with across the city. If you drive out on any day, you can see them working. They're looking into storm drains. My daughter Sloan now looks into storm drains everywhere we go. I can't get her to stop. She's as obsessed about it as we are up here. But there's so much work going on, again, behind the scenes, not glamorous, but we're doing the work every day because we want to make ourselves as resilient as possible. And we talk about resilience. We have a climate action plan that's ongoing. That work is all related to this. The things that we're trying to talk about, it's not just rain gardens and nice to have, greenwashing language. The work that we're doing here on climate is real. The resiliency pieces are real, and we're putting a lot of money behind those. So we really appreciate you guys being here today. Again, it's a moment we need to reflect and not forget how traumatic that event was, acknowledge how difficult it was, again, not just for people who were personally impacted, but for friends and family and just everyone in the community. We hope that we never have an event like this again, but our job is to be as prepared as possible should something happen again. So with that, we'll take questions if you have any. So for public infrastructure, our tally was 7.3, is that? 7.3. So that was the 7 million we were really hoping to get from a FEMA disaster declaration, but we weren't able to get that. Of public infrastructure. So our, right, the public right-of-ways, yeah. And then our, so we're looking for 2.7 million to acquire and demo 18 substantially damaged homes and 3 vacant lots. So it's 21 properties for 2.7 million from the FEMA BRIC grant. Yeah, and we'll have some of this detail for you too.
At the time, one of the, I'll say last emergency vehicles were getting stuck, couldn't get through the water, and I think they were talking at the time they would need bigger, like basic up truck, they could do a little bit. Were there any type of lessons you learned along the line?
In terms of our vehicles?
They're high water. So I think what you're referring to is the high water vehicles that the military typically has that you can get from surplus. We didn't necessarily run into any of those challenges during our event. There are multiple ways to get to different parts of our city. The only impediment we found was when we were called, they asked for some of our boat teams up in the Abingtons, and we were not able to get up through the Notch area, and 81 was essentially a parking lot. So, but we don't have any high water vehicles, but we do have an armory and a reserve center here so that if we needed to, we can reach out to those partnerships. And typically with flooding, especially with more known events, longer term, not so short, narrow like that, those partnerships are already developed, and we start to put those assets into play.
And Jim, I would add in terms of our kind of what we were able to do right away, we put together those local outreach events. We had them at Weston Field and Novembrino Park. We were able to, with our team, get resources out there from the second day after the storm, I think it was, right? We had shovels and gloves and cleaning supplies, and then vendors had we had food from different small businesses. There were all sorts of resources. We took down people's information that we were then able to do the outreach. So we were able to do that much faster than some of the state aid that came, and that was great. But it doesn't make sense, right? The state PEMA took a week or 10 days to get something stood up. I think those worked really well in concert with each other. We were able to have a quick response local operation, do everything that we could in the immediate term while PEMA was standing up that kind of broader outreach event that they had up in Chinchilla. Yeah, so it's more than 10 million, because it'd be 7.3 is our public infrastructure. The 2.7 is just those 21 properties. So I'd say it's a baseline of 10 plus the damage to the rest of the 130 or so homes that experienced damage. We were able to give $5,000 to 90 of those homeowners, but certainly more than $10 million, absolutely. And lots of damage that damage and hours spent cleaning up and things that are unaccounted for, small businesses and things like that. But certainly more than absolutely $10 million plus that we could point to right now.
For residents who still live in some of these areas, well, might not have crazy from this initial storm, is that the possibility of future storms never off the table. What is something reassuring to keep that situation like this?
Right, that's where these larger stormwater projects come into play. So in Kaiser Valley, we have a large stormwater project that's going on East Mountain, same thing. These are bigger projects that we were already started, but have continued to actually add to with more and more rescue plan dollars. Eileen pulls them from everywhere, from other programs as those programs, and so we're continuing to add to those. And there's been lots of work that's gone on in the meantime. In Kaiser Valley, for example, there's Briggs Street. There's a pipe that we worked on as a stopgap measure before that larger project is going through. But like I said, Kaiser Valley, North Scranton, East Mountain, Manuka, West Scranton, and Tripp Park, there's stormwater projects in all of those, and that should help. We also did a lot of work through in all of the creek beds. You know, there's lots of remediation work that is that the right word? Did I use the wrong word? Remediation. I want to make sure, because sometimes the words, you're supposed to use a different word for some of the grant stuff. We did a lot of work, like Wells and Watkins off of Main Ave down towards Parker Street. The amount of work that went on is just incredible. You think about, you know, sitting here, last fall we had Yard Avenue and Market. Remember that was closed for some time. We had that collapse. That's all been rebuilt. So there's just been a tremendous amount of work that has gone on, and we're very fortunate to have Tom Riley and his engineering firm, you know, heading up that work. That's been hugely beneficial to us. They know every nook and cranny of the city, I think, at this point, which we're grateful for.
Chief, is there a total number or percentage of your staff that are on staff and that are
No, we had the initial staff, and then we started to recall our boat teams, our water rescue assets in. And then I think we also called in some additional resources to help with localized flooding in basements, because we were starting to receive a lot of those calls. But our priority right off the bat was the life safety calls that we were getting. People stuck in water in cars, the houses down in the down in the Merrifield Avenue section, and also the Leggett Creek area. So we were working those different avenues, and then as it started to relieve a little bit, we were starting to send assets to help people with flooded basements, which we typically get whenever we get any noticeable rain.
do you recall how many were called in now?
I don't, I'd have to look.
And beyond the numbers, you just, as we, you know, think about these things, and we try to, internally, we try to talk about these moments, because you remember and you go back to your notes and make sure we have for the playbook for all the different things we didn't realize we needed, right? Dumpsters. How many rental dumpsters did we end up having because people were clearing out their basements or their garages and they needed a place to throw trash? So we had dumpsters. I know our DPW and Parks team, they were all over the place for weeks, loading and unloading and making sure that people had the right resources there. So there's lots of big things, like making sure that we tried our best for that FEMA disaster declaration, and then there's all the little stuff that really adds up. We hope to people feeling confident that the local government is there for them. I think we've opened up a lot of lines of communication through this event and through this crisis that have helped us be better at communicating in all aspects of city government. Right. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it.